So, yeah, I was raised Catholic and I went to church for 17 years and I was struggling to find God through that approach. Then I got into more Buddhism and yoga and meditation for a good, 20 years. Then I got into like psychedelic plant medicines for about 15 years and explored that as my spirituality. And then recently I've just come back to like Catholicism. So I've done like a full thing. And so Catholicism, the views around death there are, well, they're from the Bible, is that when we die, we will be judged, I believe, on how we showed up. And it's a bit too basic, like binary that, if we're good, we go to heaven. If we're bad, we go to hell. I don't necessarily see it like that. I think there's plenty of hell on earth, and maybe if you're bad, you're experiencing that. So from my Catholic or Christian culture or views, I believe that when I die, so I'll break it down. I think I'm a meat skeleton, but there's something that animates this meat skeleton. I remember as a nurse when I saw the first person die, I was talking to them one moment and the next moment there's just a body there and no life force. I'm like, something left the room. What was that left the room? And it was the spirit. So it was my first like real impactful experience of the spirit leaving the body.
So I felt like I was repeating a few patterns that I wasn't breaking, and I could see that there were things I just need to delve a little bit deeper on in order to progress in certain aspects of my life. So certain things that I just wasn't achieving, and I was at a bit of a crossroads with certain aspects of my life. And I I have followed your content for a while, and I think what appeals to me about shadow work is you're really putting the onus on yourself. And that's what I loved about working with you in comparison to maybe other therapists that I've worked with in the past, is quite often they can get a bit fixated on external matters and things that, and people as well. When you're, communicating to them about other people, we get fixated on what we can fix in other people or society and whatnot. Whereas shadow work really sort of turns the mirror back onto myself and makes me really reflect and look at aspects of myself where I'm not showing up in the way I want to, and then why. And you coach me in ways that can change that. So I got a lot out of it. I uncovered a lot of things, a lot of blind spots. So things within myself, unconscious beliefs, things within myself that I were playing out that were sabotaging the way I could show up and to really reach my full potential.
Awesome. Yeah, I like that. It's what makes shadow work so powerful, but also so daunting, is that it puts the spotlight on you.
Oh, yeah.
But not just you, all the bits about you that you don't love, that you don't like, that you've buried, that you don't want to confront. And then yet you showed up for that. So there must be so like a sense of adventure and courage in you, but also, so you've been interested in personal development and you've worked with some other coaches before me, some of those I know. Actually, I think I had one on the podcast this morning. And so you're interested in exploring the depths of you, the depths of your being. And in shadow work, we're looking particularly at those things about us that are uncomfortable to look at. So yeah, I just want to acknowledge you for doing that. And I'm glad that you did get some positive breakthroughs for that. Do you want to maybe outline one or two specific breakthroughs or blind spots that you?
Yeah, and also thank you to you for making it such a safe environment to express and to really go to the depths and the shadows of things that are uncomfortable, things that maybe I didn't necessarily want to acknowledge about myself, but you helped me identify them. So thank you. Some of the things that I was struggling with is taking action on certain aspects of my life. So, for example, Good Chat, it's a side business I have, and what Good Chat is essentially different decks of cards, conversation cards to prompt conversations about taboo and tame topics, but mostly taboo topics. Mm-hmm. So with Good Chat, I felt like I was just not taking as much action, and just across other areas of my life, I felt like I was procrastinating a lot, actually. Yep. And I was beating myself up because I was like, I'm procrastinating, it's me, and I'm just not good enough. And I had all these different stories around that. And something you helped me uncover was it actually wasn't procrastination. It was an inner saboteur, which relates back to when my dad died. So my dad died 10 years ago, as you know, very suddenly. And something you say in the coaching is, how did you learn to be when certain events happen? Yeah. And for myself, what I uncovered is over the last 10 years, there's just been this undercurrent of a loss of a care factor, for life, because I'd learned to believe that, well, things can just get taken away from me very suddenly. So that was what essentially was sabotaging me fully showing up in a lot of aspects of my life.
Yeah, you were like, I think you said, what's the point? It's only going to get taken away from you, so why put the effort in?
Yeah.
And that's how you felt when your dad left prematurely, yeah?
Yeah.
And interesting you say, the care factor went. I imagine you cared for your dad dearly, and I imagine your dad cared for you dearly. So when he passed, the care factor went.
Absolutely. My dad was and still is my hero. He was that steady rock that I had, and to have him taken very, very suddenly, unexpectedly, I didn't really know how to comprehend the emotions, and I still don't know how to comprehend the emotions that come with that. Yeah. It all seems just so obscure, almost. The fact that somebody who is here with me and such an important part of my life had been taken. And he was also the person that I would speak to a lot about business, and he's the person that really motivated me. He was the person who was just that grounding, stable force all throughout my life.
Yeah. Wonderful for you to have had a dad like that. And so he died when you were 20?
26.
26. Okay. So you had a great dad for 26 years, which is awesome. I mean, it's sad that he's gone, I agree. And some people might have a terrible dad for 50 years or 80 years. And so, in a wash, I think I'd rather have a great dad for 26 years.
I was very lucky, very blessed.
Yeah. But I don't want to, of course, diminish your loss at all. So he was taken from you prematurely. There's a thing called ontological shock. I don't know if you've come across that term, but if your dad was taken suddenly without any warning, what ontological shock is when you go from one way of being to another way of being in an instant. And so divorce can do that, or a business failure can do that, or I had ontological shock from a psychedelic experience where I went crazy momentarily. So you went from having this rock in your life to all of a sudden not having this rock. So a big part of that process is just the shock. You can't process shock. Shock is a state. And then there's grief, and grief is also a state rather than an emotion. And you're in this state of grief. And then through that, it's just about exploring, the emotions. And maybe there's still some work to do. Do you think is in that, or do you think
Definitely.
is there? Okay, all right.
I think after he died as well, I suppressed a lot. I suppressed a lot of emotion, and I disassociated because I just I didn't know how to deal with it. And I did have my releases at different points, but like I said, like I just couldn't comprehend this being taken from me. And I think there's been this undercurrent of then muting my emotions for many years out of protection. So wanting to keep my emotional world safe, wanting to not, I guess wanting to stay within comfort, which is something that also came up in our shadow work course, wanting to stay in comfort and safety because I didn't want to risk the emotional turmoil of something getting taken away from me again.
Okay. Is it also maybe that your protector was gone? Because your dad was probably a protective force in your life.
Definitely,
So did you feel less safe when he passed?
Now that you've said it, probably yes, because growing up, he definitely was that protector for me. And he, absolutely.
So therefore you learned to, in order to protect yourself, close off some of your emotional world and not show as much. So then that would have delayed you being able to experience some of the grief and sadness and loss, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so do you think you're in a better position now in terms of not feeling that so much need to protect yourself and allow some of those emotions and stuff to start processing and revealing them?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yes. I think I've done enough work, and I thought, this is a thing, after he died, I thought I was doing the work, and I was doing certain work to address things where I understood and accepted and grieved, but there's different layers. There's always going to be different layers that reveal themselves, and that's why I think it's so important to continue to do personal development work, because now it is a new layer that's being revealed, that was revealed in the shadow work. So I can accept that my dad is gone, but the thing that the shadow work brought to light for me was that undercurrent of how it's actually sabotaging me reaching my fullest potential.
Yeah, awesome. I like that. I like that uncovered that, because that was a barrier or obstacle that you couldn't see. Correct. It was in a blind spot, and now you're like, I wasn't taking action, and it wasn't procrastination, and so now are you taking more action?
Yes.
You are. I want to bring up another potential blind spot of yours.
Yeah. Okay.
You refer to this as your side business.
Yes.
What about just referring to this as your business, and drop the side bit?
This is true. I think I refer to it as my side business because I do have to do it on the side. I have a full-time job that's quite demanding, and I don't plan to leave my full-time job anytime soon. And the reason why I created this was it was a bit of a creative outlet. It's because there's a number of reasons why I created it. I enjoyed playing conversation cards of other brands with other people, and I also realized that I love communication, and I think that is where I feel most on purpose and giving my gifts back to the world when I am communicating. And this is a means to an end.
You're a Gemini, if I remember right.
Yes.
Geminis rule communication.
That's right.
So it makes total sense that you would create something like this. And thank you for doing it. And I'm keen to get stuck into it. But did you say that your dad's passing maybe inspired you to do this, or at least the death deck? Was the death deck part of that?
Definitely. So there's a story behind every topic, and there's a story behind every question of the cards, interestingly. They're intentional in there. But the death deck was inspired by the death of my dad, because I found that when my dad died, it was a really weird time, and people get really uncomfortable talking about death. I've even noticed this within myself when I've had friends who've had their parents pass or somebody close to them pass, and people think they should avoid bringing it up because it might trigger upset, and that might be true for some people. But for me, I realized that I actually love talking about my dad, but people would avoid bringing things up about him because I think they felt I would get upset by it. So there was all these things that were brought to light in terms of death and how some people find it really uncomfortable to talk about. So I created the death deck to try and give people a tool to raise certain questions in important, in a safe way. The card asks the question, not you. But also when my dad died, there were all these things that we had to figure out, like what kind of funeral we should have, whether we donate his organs. There was lots of things that you get thrown into this world when somebody dies that you just have to figure out. And sometimes you are there going, well, I know he would want this, or I know they would want that. But other times I felt I wish I could ask him that. The other thing with the death deck is it's not just doom and gloom questions. There's actually questions in there to inspire talking about happy memories. So if you are playing the death deck with somebody, let's say they have a terminal illness, or even you're just playing with your parents, it could actually bring about a really, really nice memory. So should they pass, you can reflect back and say, well, I had just had a great conversation with them. And you might learn something about them that you wouldn't.
Oh, I didn't see that until you said that this could actually be a tool to help people talk about uncomfortable conversations. If you've got a family member whose time's coming, and you could sit down and play this deck, and it might stimulate and promote all sorts of conversations that might not have happened. And it making it a game kind of disarms. It's kind of a bit disarming. Like I already feel like stuck into it. Like what's all the taboo about? But death is a taboo subject in our culture and a lot of cultures, but not all cultures. In Mexico, I know that they have the Day of the Dead, and they have all those, those dolls with skeletons and all that kind of stuff. And I like it. Some people think it looks a bit macabre, but I'm kind of drawn to that. And I think in maybe Tibetan Buddhism, I think they meditate on death quite a lot as a practice. I'm quite comfortable with the topic and conversation, but I'm interested in taboo subjects. And what's your view on why death is a taboo subject in our culture? Do you have any views around that?
I think because it's hard emotions for people to experience, and I think in Western cultures we weren't necessarily. Society taught us, well, for me growing up, society taught us that emotions were bad almost. I think there's a lot more light now in how important like acknowledging your emotional world is. But I think people don't know how to deal with uncomfortable emotions, and so they avoid it. And that's the point of a lot of the questions I put in there, or the other topics as well. It's things that I think people want to speak about. Maybe they don't know how to speak about it.
Yeah.
Because people haven't been taught the questions or the vocabulary, or even how to handle what to say or the answers that they might get.
So I'm just seeing more and more like what you've created here is a useful tool to help people have conversations that they might otherwise avoid.
Yep.
Which is a total shadow concept in itself, because everything we avoid is by definition our shadow. So I don't know. Do you want to get stuck into it?
Let's go.
I'm curious. Just a disclaimer or, sensitive content warning. If you're not wanting to listen to a conversation about death, feel free to, turn on to someone else's podcast or listen to another episode of mine or watch a movie. But we're going to talk about death now, and hopefully in a light-hearted, but maybe also in a serious way too. All right.
Let's go. Do you want me to ask you the first question?
Go on then.
Yeah. Right. Do you want to know the date and cause of your death? Why and why not?
My immediate first gut reaction was absolutely not.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't want to know the date or the cause. Knowing the date and cause, I imagine what that would do to me is make me quite anxious.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Why? So I kind of like that the future is uncertain and unwritten. And I like to feel that because it's unknown and uncertain and unwritten, that somehow I get to shape my destiny by what I'm doing and how I'm being and what I'm creating in the present. And I guess I think that if I knew those two bits of information, that I would definitely start doing things differently. And I don't know, because I've not thought about this, whether I could trust that those moves that I made or changes that I made would work in my favor or against my favor. Like I might make all sorts of moves that could potentially be good or have negative outcomes. It's so hard because such a hypothetical thing, isn't it? Why do I not want to know? Why do I want to know when? I don't want to know when I'm going to die. I love mystery. I think the mysterious things about life are sometimes the juiciest, and yes, I definitely don't want to know when I'm going to die. How I'm going to die. That one I'm probably more open to knowing, I guess. But then what if I find out and it's like some horrible tragedy that's full of pain and suffering? I guess maybe that would help me better prepare for that. This is such a strange question because if I was going to have such this horrible death, I might choose to exit by my own hand to prevent that. And then now I've stuffed up because now I've done something that I wouldn't normally do. So I just think that knowing those kind of things in advance, I don't trust that the moves I would make would serve me. And maybe that's why it is a mystery. I guess some people actually do get this information in some regard, don't they? If they get a terminal illness and they get a prognosis and they say, well, okay, you've got this illness and you will die from this illness, and it could be within days, weeks, months. I don't like this particular part of mainstream medicine when doctors tell you, you've got 2 years to live, and quite often people go on to live 8 years after being told they got 2. So I don't know this crystal ball thing that doctors use. Maybe they're wanting people to, get their affairs in order. Maybe there's some utility to that, but it's one part of medicine that I don't like is when doctors make these kind of prognosis. Why prescribe someone's death,
But do you also think there's a bit of beauty in that? Because quite often when people feel like they've got death hanging over them, so if they know that it's could happen, that's when they start to really fully live their life. And you see the biggest, most drastic changes in behaviors, bad behaviors, relationships, all of that, if you've got death hanging over your head. Which is why I think for this question, I would say I would opt to potentially know when I'm going to die, but not the cause. But if I knew, I would probably be leaning way more into life. Even when somebody around me, or, you have a near-death experience, or you hear about somebody dying around you, it sort of changes something, it shifts something within you because you go, oh, okay, like life is short, life is fickle. So it does make you choose to show up in a different way.
I totally get your point on that. This is why I have the skull here. This is my main prop. You may see it in some of my socials. This is to remind me, and it's like the Mexican Day of the Dead, that life is short, And so we've all got death hanging over our head. It could be tomorrow, could be in 10 years, could be 20 years. We're only here for 80 to 100 years at best. That's a very short time. I think I already live my life as though my death could be imminent. So I don't, for me, and I get that we're all different. I remember I was in a workshop in California and this woman got up and spoke, and she said that her breast cancer diagnosis was the best thing to ever happen to her. She ended up having a mastectomy, and she was like a 10-year survivor of that and hopefully still alive today. But she said getting that diagnosis, she changed everything about her life. And, she wasn't happy in her job, she wasn't eating, she wasn't exercising. There's so many things she was doing that she thinks contributed potentially to that illness. And so I take your point. For some people, knowing or having a near-death experience would jumpstart them into living differently. I think I'm already living my best life. I don't know if that sounds arrogant or anything, but I'm already living. I'm 64, so maybe got another 20, 25 years left. My dad's 90, so maybe another 25 years. That's not that much. That's a short amount of time. So I'm going to say no. I don't want to know when or how I'm going to die. I'd like that to be a mystery. I want to share something about my grandfather, so my father's father. he had such a good death. Like, if there's such a thing, well, of course there's such a good thing. So I think he was probably 80 or so when he passed. It was on Christmas Day. We're Italian, and so on Christmas Day there was 5 families, and my grandfather was the head, so he sat at the head of the table. There must have been a big long table. My nonna would do all the cooking, and my auntie, and so there was probably, I don't know, 25 people in the room. And he wore a suit, came and had Christmas lunch with us, looked fine to us. He excused himself and says, I'm going to go lie down and have a nap. Somebody checked on him an hour later and he'd passed, lying on the bed in his suit, just like that. Yeah. And I'm like, what a way to go. Like, and he was Catholic, so going on Christmas Day would have meant something to him. And he died with all his family around him. His wife, my grandmother, my nonna, had passed about a year before. So that's not that uncommon when, if people have been together for that long, they were married, I think, 60 years. When one dies, the other one dies shortly after. So if I had a choice, that's probably another question.
Jumping ahead.
Yeah. I think I just want to say that, yeah, I like the way my grandfather died. If I knew I was going to die that way, then I might be open to knowing. But if it's going to be some horrible plane crash or something, maybe I don't want to know.
Yeah, that would give me anxiety as well, knowing how.
I'd never fly again.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't get on a plane. So then I wouldn't see. I'd make all these different decisions. It's like one of those sliding door moments. Is that once I know this, my destiny's now shifted in another path. I hope I've covered that.
It's a great answer.
Cool. Have we done that card?
Yeah.
You don't want to answer from your point. You said that you want to know.
I wouldn't mind knowing the date, but I wouldn't want to know the cause, because knowing the cause, I think I would just be associating everything to it or on the lookout, and I think that would negatively impact my behaviours, whereas knowing the date, that would positively impact my behaviours.
Yeah. I guess if you know you're going to die of lung cancer, you might as well just take up smoking. You're going to go anyway.
Yeah.
Or maybe quit. Anyway, should we go on to the next card?
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you now. Oh, I do need my glasses, you know. How would you like to die?
If I was to die, I would like to die from old age, and I would like it to be peaceful, probably similar to your grandfather, the story you've just shared. I don't necessarily need to be surrounded by loved ones, but I'd obviously like a lot of loved ones in my life. And I just wouldn't want to go out in any sort of painful way. Or if it was going to be in like a horrific way, it would need to be something that was done fast. I don't want a slow, painful death. So anything that's not a slow, painful death is good by me.
Yeah, death doesn't have to be painful these days because we've got some pretty wonderful painkillers. And so if you've got access to healthcare, then people don't necessarily have to have painful deaths, which is good to know. Morphine's such a wonderful gift from nature to take our pain away. Ketamine's another good one if morphine doesn't work. So you don't want a long, painful death. You want a peaceful death of old age, and you don't need a lot of loved ones around.
Well, I like loved ones in my life, but I don't need them to be standing around the bed, while the machine gets turned off or anything like that. Maybe that's because we had to do that with my dad, and it was just a bit triggering.
So did you have to turn the life support off with your father?
Yeah. So how my dad died was he had a burst blood vessel in his brain that turned into an aneurysm. And when we found him, because we didn't hear from him for a few days, when we found him, he was technically brain dead but still breathing and alive. And so the hospital said, we can operate. He's bled into his brain quite significantly. So if we were to operate and he were to survive the operation, he would need full-time care. So then we had to make that decision of whether or not we, chose to operate and try and keep the machine on and whatnot, or we turn that machine off. And so we decided that knowing how active and healthy and able my dad was, it wouldn't be any kind of life for him if we were to keep him alive for the sake of keeping him alive. Yeah, when he doesn't really exist, you know.
Because he'd be brain dead, but his
Yeah.
heart would still be beating.
Yeah. So it was a tough decision. There's a question in there about that as well, because I think it's something that a lot of us don't really want to think about either. But what would your loved one want if they were in a similar situation? You know, what do you do in those situations if, you've got to make that decision for somebody's life?
What do you think your dad would have wanted if he had a choice?
He would have wanted us to turn the machine off.
Yeah.
And that's been, when I've connected with him through mediums, it's been confirmed that we made the right decision. Yeah. Thankfully.
Yeah, and was that would have been a discussion between family members, of course. Did all family members agree?
So this was interesting. So it was a decision that me and my two sisters made. My parents were divorced, but I had set my dad up with my best friend's mum. And so my dad and my best friend's mum were dating for 3 years, and technically they were de facto. And so when the hospital posed the question to us, they actually said technically she's the one who signs the papers and has to make the final decision. And that rattled my sisters and I because, you know, we're his daughters.
Yeah.
And she was lovely though. She said, the decision is yours. Bless her. She actually wanted to keep the machine on. She wanted to be that full-time carer for my dad. But we knew it wasn't going to be a good way of life for him. So in the end, she technically had to sign the papers, but my older sister also signed the papers. Just these bizarre bureaucratic situations you get thrown into when somebody dies is just a whole other layer.
You have no idea what to expect because unless you've been there, you don't know. And it's it's not clear. A lot of it's kind of murky. The reason I asked that, I've worked as a nurse for 35 years, and I remember one particular case where the mother was on life support and she had two sons, and one son wanted the machine turned off and the other son wanted the life support kept going. And so they always err on the side of if the person wants the machine still left on. When you say the machine, you know, it could be a ventilator, intravenous stuff, whatever. But if you've got siblings and it only takes one, so if say you had 5 and only one said no, we don't turn it off, then I believe they don't turn it off. I think that's the law. So then that's another complex issue too. And the laws around this, I think, have recently changed. I think in Australia, all states now have assisted dying, like euthanasia, voluntary assisted with dying. And I know some people that recently went through that process. Yeah. What was the question? How would you like to die?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think you've answered that sufficiently?
I think so.
I think I might have a crack at answering that as well. How would I like to die? I think what came up was like after making love.
Fair.
Yeah, but that wouldn't be very, very nice on my partner. So I'll squash that one.
I've heard about that when that's happened though for some people where they've died while they're like having sex.
That's happened.
It's like, oh my God, can you imagine?
Yeah. I mean, fine for the person who goes, but the person who's left behind, I don't know how you'd process that. So it's not that. I do like my grandfather's way of going. Yes, doing something I love, but then what is it that I love that could, like people, I'm kind of in some way envious of people like rock climbers who's just rock climbing to their passion. And these guys that free climb, they know there's a very good chance that they're going to die from free climbing, because a lot of them do. It doesn't stop them free climbing. It's almost though they know and they choose to go out that way. So I don't know if that's for me, but I do understand that. I do understand that I'm just passionate about this thing, and if this is the thing that takes me, fine. I might answer this from ways I would like not to die.
Of course.
This could get a bit too graphic. Maybe I won't go there. I certainly wouldn't like to be burnt to death.
Oh, yeah, no, me either.
Drowning sounds horrible.
Yep, no, yeah.
Plane crash, no.
I could do a plane crash. I could do a plane crash over drowning and fire.
Okay, so plane crash if you were just coming home from the best holiday of your life and you're 90 with a terminal illness.
Yep.
Plane crash is fine.
Let's go. That's kind of fun as well, I guess.
Okay. Well, that's something I didn't know about you.
It's a little bit of adrenaline, exciting.
Yeah.
You know, I'd feel bad for everyone else, but, you know,
Okay.
I feel like as you're going down, there would just be that sense of acceptance as well. Of, okay, this is it.
Yeah.
And it would be fast.
I have heard that some people, moments before their death, like they have this blissful kind of orgasmic experience of, I can relax and let go. Yeah, how would I like to go? Do I have an answer for this? I know what I could share. No, I won't go there. I'm just going to pass. How would I like to die of old age?
Yeah.
Without a lot of pain or fear. With my nearest and dearest around me. That's it. That's all I've got on that one. Cool. Do we move on?
Yeah, next question.
What mistakes do you need to forgive yourself for?
Ooh. I think I need to forgive myself for being so critical and judgmental of myself and for feeling like I should be further than I am. Yeah.
Great answer. I didn't see that coming. I love that. I thought it was going to be things you'd done to other people, but it was like stuff you've done to yourself.
Yeah, the internal battles that I constantly feel, and just knowing I need to be kind to myself and accept that, okay, this is my walk of life and my journey, and yeah. Because I think I can get caught up in, beating myself up about things, and it's no point because I just had to follow my own path, my own journey, learn the lessons in the way that worked for me.
Yeah. So forgive yourself for not having more compassion for yourself.
Yeah.
And for judging yourself. I like that. Can I use that one too?
Yeah, I was going to say, what about you?
Definitely that. There's a couple of things I'm not proud of. I do have regrets. There was one time I bullied a kid in school. I think I've only ever bullied someone once. And yeah, I feel some shame around that. I joined in a bunch of boys, teasing, and like we didn't beat him up, but we hit him, but not hard. It was more of a teasing kind of thing. We suspected that he was gay, and back then I was homophobic and young and stupid, and so I joined in that kind of behaviour, and I regret that. And if he's listening today, I apologise for being a bully.
That's big of you to acknowledge.
I want to acknowledge that because I would like to be forgiven for that. I remember when I was young, I broke into a kindergarten and stole a piggy bank full of money. I think I was about 14. It's not very nice, isn't it? Stealing from
somebody else's piggy bank as well.
I know. I was quite a rat bag when I was young. What else do I... Speaking of death, there was a time when I was a nurse where I did participate in helping someone to pass over to the other side. It was a request of the patient. He had a terrible inoperable brain tumour called a glioblastoma multiforme, which is a very invasive tumour that grows in the brain. It's very painful. He was in excruciating pain. And his wife and daughter were there, and they both also agreed that it was time for him to be allowed to pass. And so, being the nurse, I was administering the morphine, and I don't know if I want to be forgiven for that, but it's just something that, as a nurse, you're sometimes put in that position. You're not really given the training for how, we study a bit of ethics, but, each person's going to respond to that situation in a different way. And, at least once a year that comes in my mind. I'm like, did I do the right thing? Did I do the wrong thing? I don't think it's really a matter of right and wrong, because when I was trained to be a nurse, we were told that you're the patient's advocate. So you do for the patient what they can't do for themselves. And that's what he wanted. So I was his hands. There will be religious or spiritual implications behind that. I've only just recently reignited my faith. Like, I've started going to church again, which I hadn't done for years. And I don't know. I think the church's teachings on that would probably be that was the wrong thing for me to do. So if it was in the eyes of God, then maybe I'd like God's forgiveness. But in terms of earthly and the material realm, I did what the patient requested of me, what the family requested of me, what was being asked of me, and what I would have liked the option of for myself. So I don't know if that means it was a selfish thing or whatever. What was the question again?
What would you like to forgive yourself for?
Oh, of course. I was a bit of a jerk in my 30s and 40s when I was living in America. The dating over in America is totally different than the dating scene here. So over there, you can be dating 3 or 4 people at a time. Very common. And I was doing that. And during that time, I think I was a bit egotistical and self-serving. And I think I was careless and reckless with a few women's hearts. And it was fed back to me that one person in particular was very brokenhearted over the way I treated her. So, yeah, I'd like to be forgiven for that.
I can probably add a few of them as well.
Where you've been the heartbreaker?
Yeah, where I, probably haven't treated people with the respect they deserve in those dating scenarios, ghosted people,
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah, not been as gracious as you could have been.
Correct.
Yeah, nothing else is coming to mind. Yeah. Well, that's good. Actually, that's a pretty clean slate. There's not a whole bunch of stuff there. Good. I've done a whole lot of things that I'm not proud of, but I don't feel like I need to be forgiven for them.
Yeah, well, you've probably, recognised the reasons why you've done them and also come to an acceptance of that's where you're at that point in life.
That's right, which is coming back to not being too hard on yourself and having compassion for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Great questions, by the way.
Thank you. All right.
Your turn.
What, if any, are your cultural views or traditions around death?
I was raised Catholic and I went to church for 17 years and I was struggling to find God through that approach. Then I got into more Buddhism and yoga and meditation for a good, 20 years. Then I got into psychedelic plant medicines for about 15 years and explored that as my spirituality. And then recently I've just come back to Catholicism. So I've done a full thing. And so Catholicism, the views around death there, they're from the Bible, is that when we die, we will be judged, I believe, on how we showed up. And then it's a bit too basic, binary, that, if we're good, we go to heaven. If we're bad, we go to hell. I don't necessarily see it like that. I think there's plenty of hell on earth. And maybe if you're bad, you're experiencing that. So from my Catholic or Christian culture or views, I believe that when I die, so I'll break it down. I think I'm a meat skeleton. But there's something that animates this meat skeleton. I remember as a nurse when I saw the first person die, I was talking to them one moment and the next moment there's just a body there and no life force. I'm like, something left the room. What was that left the room? And it was the spirit. So it was my first real impactful experience of the spirit leaving the body. And so I believe that when we're born, people, you can argue whether it's before you're born or at birth. I think it's when we take our first breath to inspire. Spire is spirit. Inspire, spirit in. When we die, we expire, spirit out. So my views are that when we're born, the spirit enters the meat skeleton. And that spirit, the metaphor I use is it's a drop of consciousness that comes from the ocean of consciousness. You can call that ocean of consciousness God, if you like. I do. So there's an ocean of consciousness, and as I take my first breath, that drop of God or consciousness comes in my body, animates me. When I die, I expire. That last breath goes out, that drop of consciousness returns to the ocean of consciousness. So that's I guess, my Catholic views on that. The Buddhist, so Buddha's not really a religion. It's more of a philosophy, I think, because, Buddha was a man, wasn't, deity. I did read the book, the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. That impacted me. They believe in reincarnation, so that you die and then you go through the bardos, which are the 5 stages in between life and death and rebirth. I'm not a big fan of reincarnation or the idea of that. I'm not really into past lives or things like that, although I'm open to that being a possibility. And then plant medicines or psychedelics, that I remember. So through those other approaches, there's no real graphic demonstration or experience of a spiritual realm. It's more intellectual or cognitive or belief or faith-based. But the first time I drank a cup of ayahuasca, oh my God, like spirit realms just opened up, like epically. I'm like, oh my God, what is this? This is not me. This is intelligent. This is more intelligent than me, and it's indescribable. And so, and I've done a lot of psychedelic plant medicine journeys, and I still can't tell you what the content of those experiences are. I don't think anybody really can. It's very hard to know what that actually is. But I don't think those visions or mystical visions that I had under psychedelic experiences are God necessarily. I think they're probably more manifestations of the psyche or the soul operating through the brain, with the brain as an interface to, I can't really articulate that well enough. And then now I've come back to Catholicism, my roots. And so, for me, it's, I don't think death is the end. I think death is the beginning of something else. If I'm wrong, it doesn't really matter. If I'm right, hopefully I'm in for a happy surprise. That's, I guess, I hope I've covered that enough. What about you? What are your views or cultural traditions around death?
I don't know if I've got any, cultural views or traditions, but I definitely relate to seeing spirit within a body and seeing spirit leave a body. So when we turned the machine off for my dad, there was a difference. You can tell when someone's soul has left their body. It's imprinted in my mind. And it's crazy. And so I do believe that there is a spirit or soul within us. I believe that the soul or spirit will choose a human form. I believe in soul families and people, you come onto life and there's certain people who you'll gravitate towards. I do believe in soul connections, and you can have had experiences in past lives, and I do believe in reincarnation as well. I've had connections with certain people where I know there's been a past life experience with them, or I've done the regression therapy where they've actually taken me back and I've seen different past lives that I've lived, and certain people, it's weird, that it's that person, that you know them, but they're not that person in the life that you experience that life with them. It's weird experience, but super interesting. I think But I also think as well, so to add to what you were saying, I think the soul will enter the body prior to first breath. I think the soul chooses the mother or the family it wants to get born into. And I guess then this veers off into the question around what's the purpose of life? And so my answer to that would be, I think we come into life to learn lessons, and it's all about growth and reaching almost different levels, different levels of life. And yeah, when I think about life and death in general, it's surrounded by learning and growth.
So you believe in reincarnation?
Yes.
And past lives, and it's about growing. So if you learn your lessons and progress, do you get a better life when you reincarnate?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
I don't know for sure. This is purely
Might get harder lessons.
Yeah, that's right. It might mean you need to level up on something. That I think there'll be different forms of lessons. Some people need to learn lessons around heartbreak. Some people need to learn lessons around, terminal illnesses, loss, or whatever. But there are so many things. But you got to question, like, why is it that some people experience certain misfortunes in life more so than others? And yeah, like, where do these misfortunes come from? It can also be related to what we see, like, why does some person get cancer and other people don't?
Yeah.
And some medicines work for some people, some medicines don't. Like, it's all just so random that I think it just comes down to life giving you or putting you in situations that gives you the opportunity to learn certain things. But then it's, obviously you've got free will to choose how you cope or deal with those things.
So you believe in free will? I know some people don't believe in free will.
Really?
Oh yeah, I've got friends that are adamant that there's no such thing as free will. I think is it Sam Harris potentially? There's one of those academic guys who, I'm not sure if it's him, so I don't want to misname him, but there are.
So we're all just a simulation.
Well, we're living in a simulated reality, but I have to define what I mean by that. So I don't think we're living inside a computer program. A simulation to me is that I don't think we have access to the truth. I think we're deceived a lot. There's a lot of stuff that's purported to be true that isn't. I think we're being misinformed and deliberately misguided, and so therefore things aren't as they seem. So if things aren't as they seem, then things must be simulated. So my experience of life is like, so much shit doesn't make sense. There's so much stuff. I'm obviously being lied to. That's the whole idea about being my intrigue with the shadow. The shadow is the hidden, and when you're lying, what you're hiding is the truth. And I think a lot of the truth's being hidden from us. 9/11, JFK, Jeffrey Epstein, wherever you want to go, whichever rabbit hole you want to go down, COVID. There's a lot of things that are being hidden from us. So therefore the reality that we're living in is a reality of deception. So therefore it's a simulated reality. We're not really living in truth. That's my definition of that.
I definitely don't disagree, because I think you're right, and there are a lot of things that I really question. But then I guess I take a step back and I'm like, okay, I do think a lot of these things fundamentally impact my life, but what do I have control over? And that's what I want to just try and focus. What's important in my life, for my happiness, for me to achieve what I want to achieve.
Sure, yeah, I think there's some merit in that. Like, why worry yourself sick and stress yourself about things you have no control over? I'm interested in what's going on in the world, but I don't, stress myself over it because for the same reason.
Yeah, I take an interest in some of those things as well. Like, I've got a pulse on what's happening. Sometimes I'll go down the rabbit hole and then it's too overwhelming, but I've got to take a step back.
Okay, shall we move on to the next question?
Yeah. Okay.
If someone had to choose between keeping you alive with a permanent disability or letting you go, we've kind of covered this in a way, but if someone had to choose between keeping you alive with a permanent disability or letting you go, what should they choose? Okay, I get it.
Yeah, so that was one of the questions that was inspired by what I dealt with my dad. But feel free to answer.
I asked you.
Oh, okay. Yes. So I think it depends on what kind of disability.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that's important for people to talk about, because you never know what could happen. You know, you could get in a car crash or something like that. And, you know, if it's a physical disability versus a mental disability, that's where I think for me, if it was a mental disability, I wouldn't want to be kept alive.
You would?
I wouldn't.
Okay.
If it was mental, if my cognitive function wasn't there, and I think if the disabilities were severe enough that it was going to impact those around me quite a lot. So let's say, I don't know, all my limbs are gone. I wouldn't want to be kept alive in that respect, because I think that would place such a burden on my loved ones to care for me that I just wouldn't want to put that strain on them. I would rather just go.
So, okay, I get that. It's interesting you said the mental one, because I had it the other way around. Like, if it was a mental condition that I was dealing with, I mean, if I knew it was going to be permanent and it was horrific, sure, but there's a lot of mental conditions that you can grow out of, and that, you know, aren't horrible. I've got a family member who has suffered with mental illness for most of her life, but recently in the last, 10 or 15 years, she's just like normal. She's like living a completely good life without all those mental aberrations that she went through that were really hard on her and her family and our family. And so, yeah, she's quite a fighter. I don't think she would have wanted to go, even though from the outside it looked like what she was going through was horrible. Interestingly, in Canada, they have the MAID laws, medical assistance in dying laws, and they've been pushing for, through legislation, I don't think it's gone through, but they're certainly trying to push it through, that you can be given medical assistance in dying for mental health conditions, which is, I think, dangerous, because, you know, what if you're depressed? You know, I've worked with plenty of people who are depressed and people who have been suicidal, and they're still around, and they're grateful that they're still around. But say you go in on an off day and you go, I'm depressed and I'm suicidal, and they go, well, step through this door and we've got something for that. And then, you know, maybe 6 months later they would have been fine. So I think that's just a minefield. I like, why are they even trying to push that through?
Yeah, that is such an interesting perspective on it, because you're right, mental states can change with the right help.
Absolutely, they can, yeah. Did you answer your question?
Yeah.
Sufficiently?
I think so. If I'm really cognitively impaired, or if I'm severely physically disabled, kill me off.
If you believe in reincarnation, do you believe in karma?
Yes.
So what if it's your karma to live with?
Yeah, good point. This is true.
Yeah.
This is true, to fight the battle and to go against all odds. And you do see people doing those things as well. So you're right. It could be something that, but that means then, if I'm thinking back to what I said about learning lessons in life, then I haven't learnt that lesson, and die, then I'll just get reincarnated and probably have to live that in a worse form until I learn the lesson. Yeah,
because there's people with like terrible physical disabilities that live amazing lives. And there's people that are fully able to live awful lives. And there's such a variation in terms of temperament and personality. So, yeah, it's not like there's a right or wrong answer. It's like, what would you do? If I know that if I was on life support, brain dead, in a vegetative state with no help, with no chance of recovery, turn the machine off. I'd want people to turn the machine off. It's a waste of resources. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of electricity keeping that thing going.
You're so thoughtful for the environment.
And then it's just going to prolong the grief and suffering of my loved ones, and they might move on quicker if I go. And like I trust I'm going to a good place, not because I trust I've been particularly a good person, but I just have faith that, so one of my ayahuasca journeys I did, I died, not physically in the thing, but in this spirit realm. I died and I'd gone to heaven, and my spirit's arriving in heaven. This is hilarious. And it's like my name is up in lights, like huge lights. And it's like all this like fireworks going off. And it's like there's just like glorious celebration of my life and kind of welcoming me back into the fold and welcoming me home. And just the feeling of that was like, of course, like our lives is a celebration, and that we don't live it like, I live here as though my life's a bunch of worries and stresses and things that make me anxious. Not currently a little bit, but sometimes a lot. And that's not a good way to live life. I mean, we ought to be celebrating life, and because we're only here for a short time, maybe that's what was showing me, like, wasn't really showing me what's going to happen when I die, but like how I should be living now. And I'll bring up something I was going to talk about earlier. So there's another psychedelic substance called 5-MeO-DMT, or people know it as the toad. So the toad medicine's the strongest psychedelic known to man, and if you take enough of it, it's the closest thing, I think, to a death experience that I can imagine. And I did this a couple of times, and in Mexico, where it's legal, and it's basically full ego death. So it shuts off the part of your brain that recognizes yourself as an ego and alive, and so it's just lights out, and it's very scary. And but I'm curious about all things taboo, so I went there, and it's the only place known to man that we're aware of where you get to experience non-duality. I think some people say they can get there through meditation, but there's no you. So in every other psychedelic experience, there's you and the experience. And when you do the toad, you're not there, but you still have the experience. And the experience is of oneness, of being one with everything, and it's blissful. And it was the ocean of consciousness to me. I became the ocean of consciousness. So I imagine the best description I have it of is that when you smoke that stuff, I'm not suggesting people do this at all. I'm not promoting it. It is like that drop of consciousness left me and returned to the ocean. It's about 10 minutes of earth time, but when you're there, it's infinite. There's no time, there's no space, there's just being one with everything. And so that, I hope that's like a sneak, like a little peek behind the curtain, and that was showing me potentially what's on the other side. And if it is, then I have no fear or concern. It's like we just go back into an ocean of consciousness. And so, yeah, being open to these conversations about death and imagining that there is a higher power, or it's comforting for me and takes a lot of the fear and worry out of death. And I'm not aware of, like, I don't want to die before my time or before I'm ready, but when my time comes, I think I'll die with a smile on my face.
Oh, it's nice. I think I will too. I think I've just always had this acceptance of death, that it is a natural form of life, even though it's uncomfortable because you don't want to think about dying because it brings up all these negative emotions for people who are here. And then again, you don't want to cut your life short because life's great. But even as we've been talking, even though we're talking about the end, it's giving us life.
That's a good point. Yeah, I'm feeling that. I'm feeling like a high vibe.
Yeah. Even
though we're talking about the end of our life, it's creating a high vibe rather than a low one. I wasn't expecting that.
Me either. Okay, next question.
Whose turn to ask?
I can't remember.
What was the last question? If someone had to choose between I asked you that one.
We've sort of answered this one, but what does a good death mean to you? I think that came up naturally.
What does a good death mean to me? Okay. A good death to me means that, it's the end of a good life. So a good death means I've lived a good life and it's my time. and I'm ready,
Yeah,
and I have no regrets, and I have no unfinished business, and also that I'm leaving something behind. This kind of occurred to me about 5 years ago. Before I started my company and before I had my daughter, I'm like, I'm going to die without leaving anything behind. I'm like, I won't have a legacy. And again, that might sound selfish to some people, but I'm like, what was my life about if I go and there's nothing of me left in the world? So a good death to me means that my life had purpose and meaning. And so currently for me, it's about, I'd like to get another 25 years so that I get to see my daughter at 25 and get her to where she's independent, hopefully before then. But also a good death is that, because I've created a life now. Well, God created it, but came through us. And so I see a responsibility to raise our daughter into just an awesome human being who's loving her life and living a good life and doing good in the world. That'd be a good life. Yeah, knowing that I contributed to the life of another in a big way, and hopefully, what I'm doing in my business is making a contribution. So, good death is about my life having had purpose and meaning. What else does a good death mean? Oh, so this is something. Yeah, some people will probably maybe be sad once I'm gone, but I kind of, maybe a question in your deck, I don't know, but I would like my wake or my funeral to be a celebration of my life rather than everyone's standing around in black, crying and filling up handkerchiefs and mourning. I respect people's choice to express their emotions in any way. There was a big Hawaiian guy. I don't know if you've seen this video on YouTube. Israel something or other. He's quite a large young man who passed, but he was a musician, played ukulele, beautiful singing voice. And I remember watching his wake, and it was in the waters of Hawaii, and they're spreading his ashes on the ocean, and looked like the whole of Hawaii was there in the ocean, on surfboards, in boats, floating on tubes, and there was just laughter and singing and balloons and it was amazing. I'm like, this is not, if that's how they do funerals in Hawaii, then a good death is dying in Hawaii, because this is like celebration of his life. And he died prematurely. He died quite young. So a good death to me is a celebration of the life more than a mourning.
Yeah, I think I've got the exact same views of you as you, in that it should be a celebration. It should be a time to come together and acknowledge the person for who they was, share the happy memories. It's kind of why I wrote that question, actually. So I was like, if people are playing this with their loved ones, what does a good death mean to you? And then hearing somebody's answer, hopefully it can bring some comfort if that person should pass, some comfort knowing what a good death is to that person. And that answer, like what you've said as well, your answer is phenomenal. And even, just to know that you want a celebration of life over a mourning funeral. We did the same thing for my dad. We wore colour. We didn't have we said wear a splash of colour on the flyer that we had to design.
So was it a mixture of mourning and celebration, your dad's funeral?
Yeah, it was a mixture. And it's hard because you're still in shock and upset, and I guess you can't really escape the level of heaviness and that shock when someone passes, and then everyone coming together. Yeah. But then I feel like there was almost like chapters of the day, because you'd have the sort of formal setting. I don't even think it was a setting in a church, but, formal setting in a church where you see the coffin and whatnot, but then you have the wake afterwards, and that's really the celebration. And that's where I think people are a little bit more happy. You put some money on the bar, everyone starts drinking. Yes, there are tears, but there's also the sharing of happy memories. And I think that's what makes a good death. It's sharing all the good times and having those conversations, and even being brought together with people you haven't seen in a while. I remember thinking at the time, there's a lot of people that came together. There's a lot of people that reached out to me that I hadn't heard of in a long time. And it was one of those beautiful things about a sad moment where you have that love and connection really come through.
It can reunite families where there's been ruptures in relationships and someone dies and they come together and they repair the wounds because they know, oh, right, life is short.
Exactly. It's that shake-up. Sometimes like death is that shake-up that some people need to either take action or to express how they really feel to somebody. I've seen that happen as well when there's been deaths, with other people, and people have reached out to me to say, hey, I've experienced this. It's made me realize X, Y, and Z, and I just wanted to let you know whatever it is they needed to let me know at the time. But yeah, it is that shake-up that forces action because it makes people think. Yeah,
a new life can come out of death.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it makes sense now that I've thought about it that I think maybe there's a time for mourning. That's good. And because that video that I watched with that Israel guy, they were distributing his ashes. So that could have been months after his actual death. So maybe there's a period of mourning. I think most Indigenous cultures have a period of mourning. And then maybe at some point after that mourning period, then you do the celebration rather than maybe celebrating prematurely or too early.
Yeah, and that's a good point.
Might not look good. I'm celebrating this.
No. But that's a good point. There is absolutely a time for mourning, and it's not to discount the need to grieve. And even with my dad, I did have those moments of, not even moments, for 10 years of grief that go on at different pockets. But something I learned, you don't really know when they're going to come up, those moments of grief. Sometimes they come up immediately at that time. But what I also learned is, I guess, when somebody close to you dies, there's this big flurry of attention and love and support that you get for the first maybe month or so. And then it really dies off. And that's when I noticed the death the most because everything was quiet again. And then it was actually learning how to live my life without this important person in it. And you have to, just the moments where I would like call my dad each week, or New Year's was a really hard moment for me because the first thing my dad would do when it hit 12 o'clock on New Year's Eve is he would call me. And that's how I'd start every year.
Wow.
And so I had to relearn, or just, like those kind of rituals or things that build connection with those loved people who have passed. That's what's actually, I think, the hardest. And I would grieve around those moments.
Yeah.
So like every New Year's for the first 5 years, I would burst out crying because that was my thing with my dad.
Anniversaries are like that, aren't they? You might not even know the anniversary's coming up. Next thing you're having the emotional response, and then you check the calendar and go, oh.
Yes.
It's even at a subconscious levels.
It is. Yeah. That happens to me every October because he passed in October, and throughout October I just start to get I get a lot of anxiety and I'm just a bit shaky and just rattled, and then I clock that, it's coming up. I've learned now what it is usually, but sometimes I don't pick it up in time, but I notice that my body is giving this psychological response knowing that October is a hard month for me.
Yeah. And I don't know if this question's in the deck, and it's a personal question, and feel free to not answer if you don't feel to. Did you get a chance to say goodbye to your dad?
Sort of.
Like with him being conscious?
No.
No, okay.
Well, technically he was conscious, but he was
responsive.
Non-responsive, yes.
Yeah. Is there a question in the deck about if you could say something to someone who's passed, what would you say?
Yeah, there's a question. It's not even around somebody who's passed. It's around anyone because it could be alive or dead. Is there anything left unsaid in your world at the moment?
Business.
Yeah,
that's what I want. I want to die without having any unfinished business.
Yeah.
Has that been something that you've worked through, whether that you didn't get a chance to say goodbye, or what you would have, like, did you write a letter to your dad after he passed, or did you do anything like that?
Not immediately after. I have done certain like journeys and meditative things where I have written letters to him and what I would say. And I think it's it's probably now on reflection something that definitely helped at those points in time, but it's something that I think should be ongoing because, as I said before, there's different layers I'm uncovering now about death, about his death that I didn't recognize. It's not just a one and done thing. It's especially with the death of a parent or someone super close to you. It's always going to be ongoing because there's this like gap in your life. That's how I felt. And I still feel there is this hole in my life that is empty.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And that'll always be there.
I think that there's always going to be an aspect of that being there because it's my father figure. Maybe that will not get replaced, but if I was to have a partner, that masculine figure coming back again, and I know I've spoken to you about this, when I do go through breakups, I feel the loss of that masculine figure quite a lot, which is like I think associated, to the loss of my dad as well.
Yeah.
There's some crossover there.
Yeah. And then I guess you probably want to get married one day.
Yes.
And then your dad won't be there to walk you down the aisle.
Yeah, so that's interesting you raise that because after he died, I made a decision. I was like, I don't want to get married.
Oh, really?
So for a few years, I was just not really interested in dating or marriage or anything like that because I thought, it broke my heart to know I'm not going to have my dad to walk me down the aisle. And so I just, that's something I just could not bring myself to want to do.
Yeah.
I've gotten over that now.
Yes, great. I get that you had that reaction, and I'm glad that you got over it too.
But it still is something that triggers me when I go to weddings and I see the father-daughter dance. I break down like it. And again, it's these moments that, 10 years on still, it happened at a wedding not that long ago where I see the father-daughter dance and I know that I'm never going to have that. And just that gap in my life is just profound again. And it all comes up in those moments of life. And I think that's the hardest part about death or experiencing the death of a loved one is, those moments that come up in life where that person should be there or could be there.
I think that some of the tears or grief or sadness or whatever, really it's just the other side of the coin of the love. If there wasn't the deep love, there wouldn't be the deep sadness. And so like they're two sides of the same coin. And so I think that's just a bit of a reframe sometimes because the sadness can seem like despair sometimes, like deep despair. And it is that to some extent, but you wouldn't be feeling that if you didn't have this great love and this great connection. So exactly. I don't know if that's helpful or not. I think we've got one card left.
We've got plenty more left, but What are your beliefs or views about what happens after we die? Sort of covered this as well. This is the thing with the cards as well. You ask one question and you go on all these tangents and you end up just having these big conversations about anything and everything that quite often you only need a few cards to have a very fruitful conversation.
Let's pick one more.
Is there anything that confuses you about dying, death, or terminal illness?
Look, the whole thing confuses me because it's such an unknown thing. I mean, that's what faith is. I mean, faith is something you have where you can't have proof. That's what, and this is why people ask you to prove your faith. I mean, that's a nonsensical thing. Faith is when you can't have proof. And so my dad's a devout Catholic. He goes to church every day, not every Sunday, every day. And still does. He's 89. And, he talks to me about, he's ready to go. And I think he describes it as he's in God's departure lounge, just waiting to be called up. And then he'll say, I'm so confused, son, the priest is saying this and I hear that in the sermon, but doesn't agree with how I see things and what I think. And, I've spent my whole life every day going to church and what if I've, made the wrong choice? And, so even with his devout, dedication to his faith, really, I can't fault the guy on that. He still has these doubts and this confusion about it. In some ways, my dad's been my biggest spiritual teacher. He caused me a lot of suffering, and suffering quite often is the beginning of awakening, and suffering can be a spiritual awakening, I think, of some sort. So maybe my dad woke me up. But then if I look at how he's attended to his faith, like pretty impressive. So what confuses me about it, about death and dying, the whole thing's confusing. But because I'm an optimist and the glass is full, my faith tells me that I'm in for a nice surprise. And if people think I'm foolish to believe that, that's well and good. Or is that just wishful thinking? I don't think it's wishful thinking. I think I've had way too many spiritual experiences, synchronicities, just wonderful life moments that caused me to believe in something bigger than humans. There's something bigger than us. We can do amazing things. We can do really horrible things. But having faith in an afterlife or a God keeps me aiming up, keeps me on the straight and narrow. Maybe some people don't need that, but I do. And I guess because I've been a nurse for so long and been around a lot of death and dying, in that respect, there's nothing that's, well, there may be things, but I'm not. It's not such a big mystery to me.
Did you notice any patterns in some of the people you saw pass throughout the hospital in terms of?
Okay, so I saw people who weren't ready to go. I don't think I've told this story before. Maybe now's a good time to share it. There was this guy, I was nursing him for a few shifts in a row. Really nice guy, really got to like him. He was quite thin. He had something called COPD or emphysema, so, was on oxygen and very slight, small guy, great personality, loved life, and he just wanted every extra minute out of life. And by the time I'd met him in the hospital, he'd already died and been resuscitated a couple of times. And I'm talking with him one morning, and he's eating his breakfast. He's sitting up. All of a sudden, he's on a monitor. Monitor flatlines or goes into fibrillation. He just falls back in the bed dead. And I won't go into the whole story, but normally you're supposed to defibrillate them. We just end up, me and my mate next to me, the respiratory guy, we just thumped him on the chest 3 times. And the third one started his heart again. And you look up on the monitor and it goes back into a rhythm, and he just sits up and goes, "Thank you." That surprised me. That confused me. Like that was like something out of a Twilight Zone thing. I'm like, here I am talking to this guy. He drops dead in front of me. Looks like he's dead on the monitor, waiting for the defibrillator to come. There's some delay with that. So there's a thing called a precordial thump that can work, and did work for this guy. And somehow, well, he's been resuscitated before, so he must have known that we resuscitated him. What would that moment have been like for him? I don't know. But he just sat up and said thank you. So that was something unexpected. Some people aren't ready to go and they resist it. Other people are ready to go. I always prefer it when people are ready. It's so much easier to care for them. When they're resisting it, it's you can just see the anguish and anxiety in them, and there's not much you can do. You can do stuff for pain, and you can do Valium and things like that. But if they've got a death anxiety, I think some of the psychedelics are now being used. That's actually one thing you can do. And I think this is where I think psychedelics are actually better than Western medicines like Valium and benzodiazepines. Things like mushrooms, psilocybin, ayahuasca, even the 5-MeO-DMT, potentially mescaline. These can give you like spiritual experiences, and they've done clinical studies on these, and it's proven to be very effective at easing that death anxiety. I've seen that. I've seen people use psychedelics in that way and help them prepare them for what's ahead, the journey ahead.
Yeah, I've seen positive things come out of that as well. I've got a question around knowing what you know now about shadow work. Do you ever look back on some of the patients you cared for and recognize I don't know, certain shadows that were playing out in them that was maybe contributing to their death or to
My
their
uncle,
illness?
one of my uncles comes to mind. So he also had emphysema. He was on oxygen towards the end of his life. I think he was probably in his late 70s or early 80s potentially. And I liked him. He was a bit of a scallywag and, had a bit of a mixed reputation, bit of a lovable rascal, I guess you would call him. And he had an interesting, quite colourful life. And there's things I'm sure, he may want to be forgiven for in that question. Anyway, I remember I liked him and we would hang out together occasionally. And I remember asking, because I knew with his emphysema that he didn't have long to live. And I says, are you okay? Like, are you ready to go? I'm like, he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, do you have any unfinished business? Like, is there anyone are you at peace with everyone in your life? And he's like, at peace? I could name 3 people I'd love to strangle today if I could. And I'm like, okay, I guess he's not quite ready to go. And so was there some shadows there? I'd say some things there. Well, there was certainly stuff hidden about that. He didn't go into it, but it would have been interesting to get the backstory on that and how he managed to attract that in his life. But I know that I don't want to go that way. I don't want to go angry, pissed off, holding stones in my heart, resentful, bitter, twisted. I doubt I'm going to go that way. I'm not that way now.
Yeah, me too. And I think that's to bring it back to, just doing personal development, self-development, that kind of work will help release a lot of those things, that resentment and the bitterness just in general. That's why I do this kind of work, because to be able to acknowledge the emotional turmoil, but then be able to release it, it's just so freeing and liberating. And I don't want to be on my deathbed with hate or holding grudges or anything like that. I would rather go out knowing that, I've sort of forgiven certain aspects of, forgiven people, forgiven myself, and just be at that level of acceptance to know that I've done all that I can with, the things that I knew at that point in time.
Yeah, the Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
Shadow work for me has impacted because the shadows are all the things that we're not proud of, or the things we hide, bury, ignore, avoid, things we're not proud of, things we don't love about ourselves. So shadow work's prepared me even more for death, because it's about owning your shadows, right? Facing them, confronting them, but also taking responsibility and accountability for the impact of those shadows on you and others. So through doing shadow work, I've definitely cleaned my slate more and more. So that's another utility for people who are willing to confront the darkness.
Yes.
The darkness in us all. And, that's the deeper you go with shadow work, you realise that, like, we all have, both an angel and a devil in us. We all have good and evil. We're capable of all of it. And, some people want to avoid and just not look at the dark stuff at all. And for me, my opinion, my belief is that the way to the light is through the dark. Like, avoiding the dark, I think, only makes it darker and gives it power. Having said that, I'm not into devil worship or anything like that. That's something completely satanic and not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about facing the darkness in you, or the things about you that you're not proud of. And I think some of those questions kind of pointed towards that stuff.
No, but and that's what I've loved about the shadow work as well, is that I found acknowledging that everyone has within them dark sides, or sides that we're not proud of, or behaviors or patterns, but actually being able to accept that, there are those parts within us, and acknowledge them, and then, as you said, own them when they do play out, recognize when they are playing out, and then retrieve them. It was just really, really empowering for me to go through that experience and then, reclaim that power and accept myself, really.
Has it given you some freedom or liberated you in some way?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
That's what I feel it does. I think it liberates you from the unknown, because the stuff that's unknown and hidden in some way binds you. You're bound to it, whether you realise it or not.
Yeah. And I also realize as well, like I can see now if I'm projecting on somebody else a lot clearer. There were certain aspects I was aware of, but this has definitely helped me understand a lot more things. And it's definitely helped me feel more comfortable with myself and my own authenticity.
Yeah, I see that. I see that in you. I see the change in you. Yeah, yeah, awesome. How do people get their hands on one of these decks?
They can follow the Instagram, which is goodchat.cards, or the website, www.goodchatcards.com.au.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we're on Instagram, TikTok, and website, and they can just order them online.
And it's not your side business, it's your business.
It's my business. Yeah.
Awesome. Look, we only got through a few questions. There's probably months of good conversation out of that. And, you know, it definitely, I see that they do work. They get you to think about things you wouldn't normally think about, talk about things you wouldn't normally talk about.
Mm.
And they're the best kind of conversations where you don't know where they're going, because then you might discover something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every time I play these with my friends, these are friends I've had for over 10 years. We discover something new about each other.
Yeah.
No matter what card we pick out. So yeah, and as I say, some of the best memories come from a good chat.
And I like that plug there. And then they're not just entertainment. I see the therapeutic side to it for sure.
Yeah. Well, yeah, another motivation for developing them is I found a lot of people would want to have these really in-depth conversations but didn't actually know how to go about it, particularly men. I had heaps of guys when I was living in Bondi saying they wish they could have, just go beyond the surface level conversations with their mates, but they didn't really know how to go about it. So this is sort of just like it's self-help disguised as fun.
Yeah. Yeah, like you're an excellent communicator, and that probably comes easy to you. And I'm a decent communicator, and it comes easy to me. Some people are really blocked around communication and quite shy, don't know how to start a conversation, don't know how to keep one going. So these would be good tools for those people too.
Absolutely. And even just some people want to ask certain questions, but they might feel it's inappropriate. Like the death deck, or even the teams deck was made for workplaces. So safe for the workplace, nothing controversial in there. But quite often in the workplace, in corporate world, you don't really know how to get to know somebody. You might want to ask them things about themselves, but it might be perceived in a different way. So when the question comes from the card, it provides a level of safety.
Neutrality.
Yeah, neutrality, yeah.
And so do you know anyone who's used, so that's the Teams deck.
Yeah.
Is that for the corporate one? Do you know anyone who's used it in their company or business?
Yeah, plenty of people, yeah.
And what was the feedback been?
Really good. Some people use it to start off workshops. They use it to start off team meetings and just to get to know their team. So that, especially in hybrid, virtual working world, they would pull a card at the start of their weekly meeting and just get to know the people they were working with a lot more better.
Probably nice icebreaker for an otherwise boring business
100%. I played it with my team. I know, there's been a few companies that have bought it, and then I see in the sales, then it must be word of mouth, because then I see the sales come through from the same email from the same company. I'm like, okay, it's getting around the company then.
Cool, I like it. And you're quite entrepreneurial. I know you've referred to this as your side business, and hopefully it turns into something bigger. Are there other things on the horizon for you entrepreneurially?
With Good Chat, I'd love to turn it into a podcast eventually. I am thinking about doing my own podcast to play the cards with people, because I think everyone's got a story to tell. I think it's, even just hearing anyone. So to have a forum for absolutely anybody to come on and actually answer any of the questions could be really cool and fun to just get that different perspective of people, because as you know, I'm a people person.
Yes,
people.
Yes, you are.
But also, I find with podcasts, there's always the same hosts or guests that do the rounds across multiple podcasts, and you hear the same story from them, and it gets a little bit repetitive and boring when they go on lots of different podcasts. So if those sort of guests were to come onto the Good Chat podcast, we would be able to experience that guest answering questions and hearing their story around topics that they wouldn't necessarily speak about.
Yeah.
So that's something that's on the horizon for that. And also creating more topics. So this is my favorite part about it, is actually creating the cards and the questions. So I want to do one for family planning. I want to do one for retreats, one that's just purely about reflection. I also want to do one which it's going to be called like Cooked or Benders or something, and it's just going to be all like the messed up, crazy, ridiculous questions that you would ask, on a bender.
The random chaos stuff,
Yeah. So, yeah, more decks coming.
I'm curious about the sex debt.
Yes.
Deck.
Yep.
Debt. The sex deck.
Yeah, that's a great one. One of the best sellers.
Is it?
Yeah.
I think that might. Do you have more time, or do you feel time poor? What is the time?
It's 4:38. I do have time, so it's up to you.
Okay, I'll just take it somewhere else. We can always edit this bit out if you don't want to do it, but it's
Mm-hmm.
just come to my mind. Talking about death and rabbit holes and conspiracies. Jeffrey Epstein.
Oh, yeah.
No way that guy killed himself.
I don't believe that for a second.
And so I've got a little bit of inside knowledge, not on his particular case, but I've worked in maximum security prisons. And as the nurse in the prison, quite often my job was to monitor the person in the safe cell who was on suicide watch. I know how this stuff works. If somebody's on suicide watch, and look, there's so much to it, but I just want to cover some basic things. If you're really concerned about someone killing themselves, that safe cell has no hanging points in it. There's nothing to tie anything on. Everything's rounded and curved, and then they're given a canvas gown that can't be ripped and tied into a noose. There's, of course, no shoes or shoelaces. You would have to literally run flat out and smash your head into the wall, and some of them even have padded walls, but that's rare. So, but if someone's on suicide watch in a prison, there's no way they can hang themselves unless you deliberately take them off suicide watch and put them in a cell where they could suicide. So I think the whole thing's sus. Apparently he had a previous attempt at suicide, very high profile prisoner who a lot of people, two things, probably a lot of people who wanted him dead, but two, if he was the type to kill himself, then he's a high risk. So why was he ever taken off if he has a previous history of a suicide attempt while in jail, is a high candidate for either being killed or suicide? He should have been on maximum security, safe cell, suicide watch. 2 guards fell asleep, 2 cameras didn't work. None of that adds up. And he was killed.
You reckon he was killed? See, I reckon he...
The other thing about him, I think was definitely a narcissist. Narcissists have a very high opinion of themselves, and there's lower suicide rates in narcissists because they have this grandiose view of themselves. It's not that they don't suicide, but there's definitely lower rates of suicides in narcissists. So you don't... What do you think? You don't...
I think, I don't know. I don't know enough about it, but I have gone down the rabbit hole at different points, and I don't believe that he commits suicide. I think if anything, he's so powerful, did they do something to allow him to escape and he's living somewhere else? That's where my mind went.
Well, I think, they can always doctor photos, but there's photos of him as a corpse with, you can see the ligature mark around his neck and everything. And I don't know if you know this, but his brother hired a private coroner, I think, was to observe the official autopsy or whatever, something like that, or they did a second autopsy. And there were definitely suspicious things around where the ligature mark was. If he hung himself, it should be up high, but it was actually kind of down low here, and more consistent with being strangulated. And his cricoid, hyoid bone and cricoid cartilage were both ruptured, which is not common in a hanging. And then another question that came up is why did he hang himself with sheets when there was electrical wires in the room that he could have used? So there's just so much about that's sus. And then they finally come up with a video that's got 1 minute missing. And just the whole thing, like, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to work out that they're hiding a whole lot of stuff about that. And then why did he not have a cellmate when you're supposed to have a cellmate if you're taking off suicide watch? Nothing about that adds up. And so when you say, are we living in a simulation? Yeah, because they keep deceiving us and hiding the facts from us.
I have to admit, I just don't understand how that list hasn't been released when we know that is available information. So I do absolutely believe that there are higher powers at play that control so much.
Obvious, isn't it?
And yeah, just even what we see in the States in terms of their political climate and Trump being in power and all of those things, I just don't understand how that is playing out.
Yeah, there's obviously too many high-powered people they're protecting.
Yeah.
And, I think the client list really is just the flight log.
And it's a distraction from other things as well.
Well, but they're not talking about it. They're stopping talking about it.
Yes and no.
Well, Trump's trying to stop. He's like, oh, that's a hoax. Let's move on. So Trump's certainly not trying to stop talking about it. Why is Ghislaine Maxwell still in jail if there was no clients? That she's in jail for sex trafficking minors, but to who? So the whole thing stinks. The whole thing's just a big cover up. Talking about death, I think he's dead. I don't think he died by his own hand, and I think they killed him to protect high-powered people
100%
from being incarcerated. And if ever there's a shadow conversation, that's one.
What do you think will happen though? Let's say the list did get released. What do you think will happen in terms of like the disruption of power?
But that's why I don't think it is going to happen. Fauci's not in jail. I think he should be. Bill Gates is not in jail. I think he should be. People who are really, really wealthy and really elite, they kind of become untouchable. They just seem to not be held to account. And I don't know about the rest of the people, but I'm like, well, when's the accountability coming?
Yeah.
When is the accountability coming? And it's just the powers that be seem to want to deceive and hide stuff. And as a person very interested in shadow work, I'm always looking for what's going on behind the scenes. I don't trust the superficial surface things, layers that we get told. And they need to come out with the truth that it wasn't suicide. Then they need to release the client list, and then people need to be jailed. Is that going to happen? I think it's unlikely.
What do you think will happen if it does though? That's what I'm saying. Like, so many political and power structures would potentially crumble.
That'd be great. I think that'd be great.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways it'd be good because I think for a new for political reform, I think the old ways have to crumble. So here's my. I'm going to do a whole podcast on this, but here's a spoiler alert. Here's what I think is really going on. I really don't think that the war that's happening is between Democrats and Republicans, between Muslims and Christians, between the rich and the poor. I think the war that's going on really is between the psychopaths and the empaths. And psychopaths, so psyche means soul. We talked about the soul coming into the body. This is just my belief. I think psychopaths are born without a soul. So they're a human. They're like an animal. We're animals. We're part of the animal kingdom. But what distinguishes us from animals is that I think we're given a soul. And part of God comes into us. But I think for some reason, psychopaths are born without a soul. And the rest of us empaths, we have a soul. So we can feel empathy and compassion and regret and remorse. And psychopaths don't have that. And because they can't be motivated by noble and compassionate causes, they're mostly motivated by winning. So you find them at the top. governments, corporations, not all people in top. I'm not saying that are psychopaths, but they are hell bent on winning, and they're very clever at manipulating, controlling, deceiving, and I think that they're coordinated enough now through the internet and whatever to be able to protect each other. So the psychopaths are protecting the psychopaths. They have no empathy. They just want to win at all costs. They don't care who gets hurt or dies in the process. So that's the real war going on. I think it's a spiritual war between those with souls and those without. And I think we need to identify the psychopaths and deal with them.
100%. I think so too. I think that's a really interesting and good take on it. And I think they're all so interconnected in this web of power, lies, manipulation, crime, that I actually think some empaths are caught up in it but can't extract themselves out of it either. And that's why it's not breaking, it's not falling yet, because everyone is so intertwined in it. Everyone on that level has done something detrimental to their reputation, who they are. Yeah.
And then the empathy, you can have too much empathy, and that just makes you more vulnerable to the psychopath because you won't see the monster and the evil in them because you're so empathic that you only believe in the good in people, and you can't even see the darkness in your own heart, so you can't see it in the hearts of others. So that's another way where I think working with the shadow, if you can accept there's evil in you, you're more likely to see it in others. And if you only think you're all good and all light and spiritual bypassing, and you don't believe you can't see the evil in your own heart, you won't see it in others. And I think some people become too empathic and enable the psychopaths to get away with what they're doing.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely the enablers, and definitely the people who make excuses for the behaviours of others, which I think on the grand stage of the world is exactly what's happening.
I think people are waking up to that. Hopefully more and more people are waking up to that. We need accountability for these people who have done these crimes against humanity. Yeah. Even Netanyahu, like what he's done there in Gaza, like it's practically a genocide, and that's a war crime. There's war crimes going on there. Will he be held to account? I mean, I think he's going through a court case at the moment, but it's unlikely he'll be held to account. And these wealthy elites, who I think are psychopathic, are getting away with stuff because they've got friends in high places, and there's all sorts of deals being done behind closed doors to not hold them to account. And so, things need to collapse, things need to fall apart so that these structures that are protecting the psychopaths break down and exposed, and that we learn from the lessons of that, and we put things in place so that we're able to identify psychopathic behaviour and exclude them from being in positions of power.
Is there anything that people could do on an individual level to help the collapse? Contribute to the collapse?
Is anything we do can contribute to the collapse? I don't know what people just need to follow their heart, and I think take action where they feel they can best be served. I mean, I'm all for freedom of speech. So if there's a petition going or a rally for freedom of speech, I support that. I think if there's no freedom of speech, if there's censorship, then why would you want censorship? The only people who want censorship are people who have got something to hide, and what they're wanting to hide is the truth. And I'm a big believer in that. Some people can't handle the truth. I can handle the truth. Like, give me the dirty truth and I'll be okay with it. Tell me a bunch of lies and I won't be okay. And Jordan Peterson talks about this, and he studied totalitarian regimes. In a totalitarian regime like in communist Russia under Stalin, everybody's lying all the time. And 60 million people died under Stalin. So lies and deceit, hiding the truth, censorship, ends up in those kind of totalitarian regimes. It's not that long ago. It's like we've seen this before. So freedom of speech, I'm even okay with hate speech. You can tell me you hate me. I don't care. You know, sticks and stones may break my bones. Why are we like legislating against hate speech? You know, inciting violence, I think we should draw the line at speech that incites violence, but all other speech should be free and open without censorship. You should be able to say what you like, and then let people determine whether it's the truth or not. Well, you had a different opinion there.
Yeah, I do, because I think, with hate speech, it depends on people. Some people that can be directed to really vulnerable people, and if that hate speech causes self-harm or death, I think there should be some measures to protect that.
I hear that. My counter position on that is that you don't make people stronger by protecting them. You make them stronger by teaching them how to deal with adversity. Yeah, people can be vulnerable. I hear that. How do you identify who the vulnerable ones are? And then why should you pass a law that affects everybody to potentially prevent a few vulnerable people from potentially coming from harm? I think we should identify who the vulnerable people are and give them the skills and the tools to deal with hate speech or people saying mean things about them or adversity or whatever.
That is where my mind then went, as well as how then do we equip people? Like if you're going to flip it and go, okay, well, if you, rather than passing a law, how can you equip people then, or pass a law where people are educated to deal with adversity?
That's right. Well, that's what they should be teaching in schools. They should be teaching people how to deal with adversity. If school's going to be about anything. I mean, we're going to homeschool our daughter. And one of my main goals as her protector is to teach her to protect herself. And by teaching her how to deal with adversity and how to stand up to bullies, and how to be a strong person in the world. I don't think we help people by wrapping them up in cotton wool or protecting the vulnerables, within reason. But I don't think hate speech is, if you've got, if somebody's vulnerable, strengthen them. If you're robust and got good boundaries, then I'm not vulnerable to hate speech. People say whatever they want to me. It's not going to, like hurt my self-esteem or, cause me to go out and self-harm. So if people have those kind of tendencies, that they're so vulnerable that they self-harm, if someone bullies them, then those people need to be strengthened. Don't pass a law that inhibits what people can say. We have to be able to say everything so that we can talk and have reasonable, rational debates, and that's my opinion.
But what if some of that those talks are not rational? Like the hate speech quite often isn't rational.
Yep.
And I guess where my mind is also going to, like, adolescents and people who are younger, who are using social media, who you see the suicide rates are climbing, and it's heartbreaking to see that they have got an open forum and
So is the problem hate speech, or is the problem young minds with access to social media?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
It's hard to...
But there's always been hate speech. There hasn't always been... People have been saying horrible things about people since the beginning of time. So if the suicide rates are going up now, I think it's more because you've got young minds that aren't prepared to have access to really toxic conversations. So you prepare them in school. Say, look, there's a lot of hate out there. And a lot of that hate is just people projecting their shadow on other people. It's got nothing to do with you. You shouldn't be taking any of that stuff personally. Educate them that way. Like, build resilience in them.
Like I said, I don't disagree, but I think people are still going to have... Some people will take it to heart, and some people will have that emotional reaction to it that might be, if they've got a really strong emotional world, then how do you control that? Because, somebody could hear something or if it's repeated multiple times and all they're seeing on social media is hate speech towards maybe a, minority group, a culture.
So you're talking about somebody who's vulnerable, highly emotional, And so they're hearing this hate speech online. Why don't they just not click over to, like, just exit whatever they're listening to? So I imagine it wouldn't just be one occasion that would cause them to go and self-harm.
Yeah.
It must be multiple occasions. Why is this person, what's going on for this person that they're continually checking in with this, like, stuff?
Well, sometimes they may not be. Maybe it's the algorithm. That's the thing. The
Okay.
algorithm is feeding that particular hate speech that's going on, or if there's, cultural minority groups. I don't know enough about it, but that's just sort of what I observe from a different angle.
So you're for hate speech laws?
To an extent, yes. Yeah. I think there should be some governance around the hate speech and some of the bullying that goes on online, just, again, as a form of holding people accountable.
So they can still do it, just not online?
No. Well, I guess online it's traceable.
Can they stand with a megaphone on the street corner?
That wouldn't be nice. But I guess they could get arrested then. So
They could, yeah. So hate speech laws, not just online. You're talking about hate speech laws in general. Who decides what's hate?
Yeah, I know, that's a rabbit hole. I think anything that's discriminatory towards a culture.
Who decides what's discriminatory?
Well,
is a white person calling a coloured person black discriminatory, or is a black person calling a white person white discriminatory?
I think it comes down to the intent of it. So if the intent,
who gets to police who's what?
But if the intent is to hurt, or harm the other person or to offend the other person,
Okay.
that's when it becomes hate. Because there can be speech that people might say that offends, but it's not with the harmful intent of hurting that person. It might just be a lack of knowledge, a lack of understanding.
Right. So then you'd have to prove intention.
Yeah, kind of like, what is it with murders? Like, you've got to
prove motive.
prove motive.
Yeah, it's like, good luck with these hate speech laws, and then proving that they intended to hurt someone with it. I mean, I'm sure those cases are already being held, and I think they are. I've heard of some of them. But yeah, it's just crazy.
I don't know. I don't know enough about it either, though.
No, we touched on it. All right. I think we'll wind it up.
Yeah.
I don't think it was any hate speech today.
No.
Only love speech.
Only love and light.
Love and light, mixing with a bit of death and darkness.
Yep.
Thanks for coming on. It's been a pleasure. I think you're a wonderful communicator. I think you've done a great job with your cards, and hopefully they stimulate good, open, uncensored conversations.
Yes, me too. They already have. So thank you very much for having me on and playing.
Pleasure.